The air was dry, heavier than ever before. The earth cracked the once vibrant grasses, and lush foliage now withered and faded into dust. The vast open savanna stretched endlessly, a barren wilderness where the scorching sun never relented. No rain had fallen for months, and every living being struggled to adapt. In the midst of this unyielding drought, a small tribe of early humans, Homo habilis, carried on their daily survival. The tribe's leader, a wiry figure with weathered skin, stood atop a large rock, scanning the horizon. His sharp eyes, accustomed to the harsh realities of the environment, saw nothing but the endless expanse of arid land. The last water source had dried up weeks ago. The tribe's children, their faces caked in the dust of the land, played quietly near the remnants of a fire pit. In the distance, a group of gazelles moved in tight formation, their bodies thin and frail, yet still managing to find patches of life in this dying world. The humans gathered in silence, focused on their daily tasks. Some were crafting tools, sharp stones, for hunting. Others were fashioning makeshift baskets from dried reeds. The women were grinding what little grains they had, while the men were testing the traps they'd set earlier that morning. Each task was done with a sense of urgency, the reality of their survival weighing heavily on every movement. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the heat became unbearable. The leader motioned for the group to gather. There was something urgent. The group moved quickly to the shade of a few sparse trees, where their only source of remaining water trickled from a small rock crevice. They used leaves to collect the precious liquid, and even then, it wasn't enough. The leader's face was set in grim determination. He pointed toward the horizon, his eyes narrowing at a distant shape. A storm was forming, but it was not the rain they desperately needed. It was a dust storm, an unforgiving force of nature that would make survival even more impossible. The wind began to stir, carrying the dust across the land like a smothering blanket. There was no time to wait. The tribe had to move. The first challenge arose as they gathered their few belongings, stones, tools, a few bits of food. They began their trek across the barren landscape, moving swiftly, but the dust storm quickly overtook them. The wind howled and the air became thick with sand and debris. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The tribe had to rely on the sounds of their surroundings. Each step was a calculated risk. Suddenly, a shadow loomed in the distance. A predator. A large lion, desperate with hunger, moved through the haze. Its sharp eyes locked onto the group, and in an instant, the tribe's hunters readied their spears. They knew that a confrontation was inevitable. The lion, weakened from lack of food and water, had no choice but to attack. A vicious struggle ensued, the sound of spear striking bone and the roar of the beast cutting through the chaotic storm. The tribe fought back with every ounce of strength they had. Their survival depended on it. The men coordinated their efforts, one distracting the lion, while another aimed a spear at its heart. The women and children stayed behind, their faces etched with fear, but understanding the stakes. This was not just a fight for food. It was a fight for life itself. The storm intensified, the howling wind pushing the dust into every crevice of the earth. The lion, now injured, stumbled back, its primal instincts telling it to retreat. But it was too late. With a final thrust, the spear found its mark. The beast let out a final defiant growl before collapsing into the dust. Silence followed. The tribe stood frozen, their faces covered in grime, their bodies trembling from the battle and the relentless storm. They had won, but at what cost? The loss of energy, the toll of the fight, and the increasing desolation of the land weighed heavily on them. But survival was a sacred bond, and each victory, no matter how small, meant they could endure another day. The leader motioned for the group to keep moving. There was no time to mourn. The storm was closing in, and with it, the certainty that they had to find a new source of water before it was too late. They set off again, their legs heavy, but determined, their path set through the swirling dust. As they walked, the leader's eyes never left the horizon. He knew that they were reaching the end of their territory. Beyond that lay unknown dangers, hostile tribes, perhaps even more deadly predators. The world was shrinking, the resources fewer with every passing day. But he also knew that their tribe's survival depended on their unity. They had survived worse than this, and they would survive again. After what felt like an eternity, the storm began to subside. The winds calmed and the dust settled, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The tribe found shelter beneath a large rock outcrop, and there they rested for the night. The leader set his watch, always alert, knowing the challenges that awaited them with the dawn. But as the night wore on, something unexpected happened. From the darkness, another tribe appeared, haggard, weary, but with the unmistakable signs of having endured just as much. The two tribes faced each other, each eyeing the other with suspicion, each tribe aware that they were competing for the same dwindling resources. The tension in the air was thick, the threat of violence just beneath the surface. It was a moment of reckoning, a moment when survival was no longer just about hunting, gathering, or escaping storms. It was about choosing whether to fight for what little remained or to find a way to share what they had. The leader of the second tribe spoke, though no words were exchanged. He extended his hand in a gesture of peace, his eyes weary but resolute. The first tribe hesitated, their distrust palpable. But the leader of the first tribe knew the truth: they could not afford to fight among themselves. The land had already taken so much. They needed each other now more than ever. Slowly the tension eased and the tribes came together. They shared their food, their water, and their fire. The bonds of survival had overridden the instinct to fight. There, beneath the open sky, they found a brief moment of peace, a glimmer of hope, in a world that was slowly fading away. As the morning sun began to rise, the tribes prepared to leave together. They would continue their journey side by side, united in the struggle to survive the ever-present drought. The land had tested them, but it had also brought them together. For the first time in what felt like forever, the leader allowed himself a small smile. They had faced the worst and survived, and in the face of the unknown, that was enough. The group moved onward, following the leader's careful guidance, their hearts heavy with the weight of their journey. The drought still loomed, an ever-present threat to their survival. But now, as they traveled with the second tribe, there was a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer alone in this desolate world. They had each other, and together they might stand a chance. As the days passed, the two tribes began to adapt to one another. The first tribe taught the newcomers how to use their stone tools more effectively, how to track the few remaining animals, and how to craft baskets from the sparse vegetation that still clung to life. In return, the second tribe shared their knowledge of distant water sources hidden beneath the roots of ancient trees, untouched by the sun's unforgiving rays. Their survival had become a cooperative effort, each action, each skill, each contribution building upon the last. The two tribes were no longer strangers. They were a single united force bound by the struggle to live. Yet the challenges were far from over. The sun burned relentlessly, and each day seemed more oppressive than the last. But with each new sunrise, the tribes grew stronger. Their unity provided them with more than just the strength to endure. It gave them a sense of hope, a sense of purpose, beyond the primal struggle for food and water. And then, One fateful day, the unthinkable happened. A cloud appeared on the horizon. The first drop of rain fell like a blessing, and within moments, the sky broke open in a torrential downpour. The land parched and cracked, drank in the water eagerly. For the first time in what felt like forever, the tribes stood together, not in fear but in relief. The drought had not defeated them. Together, they had survived, and as the rain soaked the earth, their laughter echoed through the savanna, proof that even in the harshest of times, unity could prevail.